Hello and welcome you crazy people, my name is Jay and in this video I'm going to be talking about the next Star Wars game that Atomic Mass Games might make. Now when they took over the Star Wars games from FFG and the license, they said, yeah, we're almost certainly going to be making some new games. And speculation at the time was a few pleasantries, but now I'm suspecting that the game is further ahead in development. They probably have the core rules perhaps, or at least a vague outline of the rules, and I wouldn't be surprised if the miniatures and stuff like that won't be going into development by the end of this year, because then I suspect it'll actually only come out in like 2023. Things just take a long time is what I'm saying. But I just have put a little bit of thought into it lately, thinking about what kind of games we might get and why. So let's think about what we can rule in and what we can rule out. Like, what do we know and what do we not know? I don't think they're going to be doing another spaceship game. They have X-Wing and they have Armada. So I think we can rule that out. They also talk about the hobby a lot. I think Simone in one of the live streams basically said they quite enjoy the hobby and that's one of their focuses. So having like pre-painted ships that people are used to might not materialize. So I think we can pretty much rule out a spaceship game. Not guaranteed, but that's what I think. So I think there's three main types of games that we might get. And the first one, I don't know if it's wishful thinking, but I think it's actually probably odds on in favourite, but maybe we'll see. And that is a pod racing game. You know, like this is pod racing. So the reason I think this might make sense is Gaslands was very well received. And like I can imagine like a Star Wars junkyard aesthetic. Maybe you have like a campaign where you can scale up the races and stuff like that. And yeah, you just think about what you get there. You get the vehicles, so you can maybe intermix the vehicles. You get the miniatures, like the actual pirates that you could intermix as well. I feel like there's a lot of good hobby there. You know, very thematic characters. It's all character based, maybe with some generic pilots thrown in, and you know, sponsorship like Gaslands does and all that kind of stuff. Like, I think that could be a really fun game. Now, how the mechanic of the game would play, like a little bit like Gaslands, I imagine, but I think because it's pod racing, you'd have to see some sort of race mechanic. And I think, quite frankly, you could just do that with like numbered pylons. Like you could end up with like, you know, pylons at 1 and then another pylon, two set of pylons that say 2, and you literally just place them on the table and that's your course. Now, it wouldn't be the most competitive game, but Atomic Mass Games don't seem to be that focused on competitive games. So I honestly think on like a 3x3 table, a little bit like Marvel Crisis Protocol, that a pod racing game really has a lot of potential. It seems that the Clone Wars factions are very well received these days, you know, with the Clone Wars, the TV show, Bad Batch just coming out, which I've not seen anything of or anything like that. Even the Clone Wars factions in Legion doing very well received, people like them a lot. Having the pod racing thing, which was from obviously the first film, Phantom Menace, you know what I mean, that I just feel like the potential there is really strong. Now, it would be a lot of vehicles, but they would obviously not be pre-painted, I would presume. But I just feel like the character that you could get in those miniatures would be very interesting. Now, maybe it is wishful thinking, but I just can't shake the idea that a pod racing game would be super fun and possibly right up the alley of Atomic Mass Games. The second one I think we could get, but I sort of hope not, and I think it's less likely, is maybe like a scaled out ground battle. So, you know, maybe something like Adeptus Titanicus, for those of you familiar with that. It's like you have all the Titans, but they're actually quite small because the scale of the battle is much bigger. So, obviously you would then see AT-ATs or AT-ATs and stuff like that. A bit of me I don't really see that doing that well. So I don't think they would put their money on that. I just, for some reason, even though they come from like a lot of the people who work at Atomic Mass Games come from like a privateer press with War Machine and Horde, I just, for some reason, I just can't see that being the game that they think of when you think of Star Wars, having like a zoomed out battle. Yes, I'm sure some hardcore fans would really, really like it, and you might be one of those people, and I'm not saying you're wrong, but I just have a feeling that that's not where they'll go. Because, quite frankly, apart from the AT-AT, I can't think what other things you would get in that, like off the top of my head. Would the normal vehicles, say from Legion, be too small in that scale? If the AT-AT or the AT-AT is the biggest thing on the table, I don't know. It's a maybe, I think, but with just vehicles, I don't necessarily think vehicles alone really offer the hobby opportunities that Atomic Mass Games would be looking for. That's just my vibe. Maybe they would do like miniature units, like 5mm, 50mm scale, whatever. But for my money, it's an option, but I don't think it's necessarily a realistic option. Now, the third one that I can conceive of in my head is essentially Kill Team or Warhammer Underworld. Now, the reason I say that is I do think that they like humanoid figures. Who doesn't? I think humans are maybe predetermined to like other humanoids. So I do think that they like human figures. The problem with this is if they're looking to do something that's not Star Wars Legion, they run the risk of clashing with Star Wars Legion one way or another. If it's the same scale, people will wonder why can't I use that model in this and why can't I do that? Now, if that is not the case, because maybe it's like Kill Team, and I don't really know how or why, but maybe they just shrink the board even further than a skirmish game into maybe like a 2 foot by 2 foot or something. I don't really know how they would go about that. But like a Kill Team where you can actually still use miniatures from Legion, but actually you can use miniatures that we're going to specifically design with like characters and stuff like that in mind, just for the Kill Team version of the game. Obviously it wouldn't be called Kill Team. For those of you who don't know, Kill Team is a Games Workshop game that is on like a 22-inch by 30-inch board, something like that. And it basically just uses miniatures from Warhammer 40k, and the other game, the fantasy version of that, is like Warcry. So I think that is a possibility, but I think my money head sort of speaks, and I think you'd want to make a new range of games, like a new game with new miniatures, simply to sell those miniatures. Maybe I'm being a little bit cliche there, but I think you would make more money doing that. So I struggle to see how you do a humanoid game, battles with humans or aliens, where it doesn't slightly conflict with Star Wars Legion. Now, one way you could do that is maybe like a pub brawling kind of game, like a cantina brawl or something like that. Maybe even more concentrate on the bounty hunter lifestyle, like the Mandalorian. But they sort of feel like, in my head, I sort of feel like it's just going to conflict a little bit too much with Star Wars Legion. Then they could go... this would maybe really irritate the old Imperial Assault players, because then they could maybe go to a hex-based skirmish game, something like that, where, you know, again, maybe you buy a warband. It wouldn't be called a warband. It would be like a party. I don't know what the group of people would be called in a Star Wars game, like a fellowship, but not fellowship. I'm sure they have a proper name that's in everybody's head. But you know, I don't know. I could see something like that. Maybe even something like a Jedi duel. But I just feel like that's so similar to Star Wars Legion. My point being here with this third option, I'm covering a lot of like ground and a lot of opportunities, because if you're going to go with humanoids, I feel like there's a very niche way of doing it that wouldn't get in the way or conflict with Star Wars Legion, and I'm not sure they will risk and find that niche. For me, that feels like a bit more difficult to reach in and get something, pull something out of your pocket that's going to please everybody. But I would probably quite like to see it, you know. Maybe that would make sense. You then have 2 space games and 2 infantry kind of games. So it will be very interesting to see what they do. You know, maybe like I was going to say like an XCOM game, but I still think that's like Imperial Assault. So maybe something like that, but without the board, more skirmish. Yeah, like again though, it's just so similar to Star Wars Legion. I don't really know how they'll go about it. Obviously Star Wars Legion is supposed to be like mass battle, so maybe they'll just shrink it down into like a board that you can put on your table with a hex grid. That was all the rage like last year or 2 years ago with Riot Quest, which maybe some of these people were involved in, and God Tier and all that. So maybe, but my personal favorite option, and is the one that I like the most, but I actually think is probably the most likely, is pod racing. It just has everything you want. It's a new style of game that they could sort of use mechanics from Star Wars X-Wing. You could have like turns that you preset and you don't know what your other opponents are going to do, and you could have your templates and stuff like that. I just feel like it's right up, well, it would be right up FFG's alley, but I feel like it might be the game that Atomic Mass Games go for. You get miniatures, humans, you get pods racing. Pods sounds weird, but you just I want it. I think it's possible. I think it makes sense, and I think that may be what we're going to get. We'll see if I'm right in probably, I don't think it'll be this Gen Con. I think it'll probably be like next Gen Con. So I'm way early, but you know, it is what it is. Have a most beautiful day. Like and subscribe. Goodbye.